Hayanathan, Assistant Professor and Coordinator of Bards Club, Research Department of English, St. Joseph's College, Trichy, to give a warm welcome to the gathering.
A beautiful and colorful good afternoon to all gathered here. I welcome you all to the fourth meeting of the Bards Club. First, let me welcome Reverend Father Rector, Reverend Father Secretary and Principal, the triple pillars of the great Temple of Learning. These people, I encourage the various departments to do student-centric activities and to motivate students to march towards excellence. I welcome you all, fathers. And then I give it a great privilege to welcome the head of the department, Dr. Ph.D., the man behind all great endeavors to equip the students. I place on record the dedication and the guidance given by Sir in all the programs that we conduct on behalf of Bards Club and other clubs and other activities of the department. So thank you, sir, for being here and for contributing to the gathering. In a special way, I welcome Mr. Santhosh. He is the church father. Sir is our own alumni of the Department of English. As a student, he was very enthusiastic and very keen in learning. He is known for his intellectual stamina, and I have seen him inside the classroom and even outside. He is a member of various forums. He has presented a lot of research papers and enthusiastically involves staff, students, and research scholars of research activities via admin of various Telegram groups and WhatsApp groups. He is disseminating research information. I welcome Mr. Santhosh, who is going to enlighten us on the topic protest poetry. Poetry is very crisp and it becomes a medium for people to place on record their protest. And down the ages, people have used poetry to express their resistance towards oppression. And here we have a very resourceful person to deliver a talk on the topic protest poetry. Welcome you, Mr. Santhosh. And I welcome all the student enthusiasts who have been here, who have joined the meet. You will listen to a very interesting topic. Okay? Kindly stay to the end of the program and you can find your meeting and be active and please participate.
Thank you, sir, for your words of welcome. I heartily welcome the most amiable, ever smiling and motivator, that is none other than Dr. D.L. Jayapal, Head Research Department of English, St. Joseph's College, Trichy, to felicitate the gathering.
Good afternoon, my dear students. Good afternoon to you all. First of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. for organizing this meeting, encouraging our students to know more about poem and poem writing. And especially he has invited our own student, Mr. Santhosh. We are very happy to have you, Santhosh.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Meeting you after a long time through online is really it's a great pleasure. And, yeah, and our students, particularly this year, we have a very good set in UG and PG, and many of our students are very much interested in writing poems and coming out with publications. So I think this meeting will be definitely useful for them. And once again, I congratulate Dr. Tiruchirappalli and the supporter who is with him to conduct this club meeting. Dr. Beverly Maria Francis, who are coordinating this programs, in a very wonderful way. I really feel very happy. And once again, I welcome all the students and wish you all to have a very wonderful session again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Finally, the wait is over. I honorably invite the speaker of the day, Mr. L. Santhosh Kumar, Ph.D. Research Scholar, Research Department of English, Bishop Heber College, Trichy, who is a man of uniqueness and innovation in the field of poetry. Over to you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Santhosh.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, I will just share.
Over to you. Yeah.
Just a minute, sir.
Okay. Kindly unmute yourself, Santhosh.
I have unmuted myself, sir. Yes.
Yes.
The neither the natives upwards. What I do not teach to start to example. So this is up to a lead master.
So are you able to see my PPT, sir?
Not yet. Have you joined with another account or in the same account you're trying?
Same accounts in the same account.
Okay. So we click present now.
Yes, sir.
And there are three options. One is your
Yes,
entire
screen. Yes, sir.
You can use a window.
Okay,
Or
sir.
your entire screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Okay. So hope my screen is visible now, sir.
Yeah. I think students have to. Yeah, it's visible. You can. You can. Yeah, you may continue.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Let me give you instruction to the students. Students, you can pin the PPT screen if you want, so that you can follow the lecture that is going to be delivered by Mr. Santhosh. Okay. In the people section, you can find the presentation screen. You can click and you can pin the screen.
So shall I start, sir?
Yes, you may start.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I place my thanks to the head of the department and to my professor, Dr. V.L. Jayapal, sir, for giving me an opportunity to deliver a talk in a Bards club. And a special word of thanks to the coordinator of this club, Professor Dr. Gerald Saganandan, sir, my professor, and also to the vice president of this club, Dr. Beverly Maria Francis, ma'am, my professor, for giving me a space to showcase my talent. Thanks to these professors, and my special thanks to each and every professor in my department in the St. Joseph's who have shaped me very well in all ways. I'm much indebted to each and every professor of this department. And I would just like to enter into the topic. The topic which is given to me here is that protest poetry, and I've just titled this as understanding protest through poetry. And in general, what do you mean by poetry? People in general, they give so many definitions for poetry, and in other contexts, sometimes they even quote the quotations uttered by the poets. For example, if you take the famous definition for poetry uttered by Robert Frost was poetry is the permissible way of saying one thing and the meaning another. And if you take another famous definition of William Wordsworth, poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. These two definitions play a vital role when anyone asks, "Oh, how do you define poetry, or what do you mean by poetry?" Whereas the general essence of poetry, or the general definition for poetry, is that poetry is literature in its most intense, imaginative, and rhythmic forms. I just repeat, poetry is literature in its most intense, imaginative, and rhythmic forms. And next, the topic which I'm going to share with you people is that protest poetry. And people here often they have a confusion. What do you mean by protest literature and literatures of protest? Often academia they make a confusion. They try to confuse the fact that protest literature and literature in protest often these both literatures they go hand in hand, and it is not true. So protest literature, it talks about the social inequalities which is happening in the society. The social inequalities, I hope all of you can understand. It can be caste discrimination in the Indian context, or even the plight of tribals, how they are being displaced in their own homeland in the Indian context again. And if you take in the Afro-American context, the very predominant issue, even in the contemporary times, is the racism. And another thing in the Afro-American context, in the Afro-African context, is about the black feminism. All these issues, they are said to be social inequalities. And another thing when it comes to social inequalities is that most of the war zone regions, any literary piece which sprung from the war zone regions, they are also classified or they are also categorized as protest literature. And another thing is that literature of protest. The literature of protest, it clearly analyzes literature of protest. It clearly analyzes the suffering of an individual from someone's perspective. For example, when I myself sit and analyze the suffering of a tribe, or suffering of a tribe from Bangladesh region, that is said to be the literature in protest. Whereas the protest literature, it is being written by a person who had undergone that traumatic experience. In other words, collective suffering talks through collective suffering, the personal identity is being brought out. That is said to be literature in protest. Whereas in protest literature, through individual, I repeat, whereas in protest literature, through individual, the collective suffering is brought out. That is the difference between protest literature and literature of protest. And next, protest literature. Here in this slide, you could see pictures. So many pictures are here, and if you take the first picture, it is our the first picture is about.
Kindly move the slide, okay, because it is there in the title slide.
Just a minute, sir. Can you see now, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you see this in this slide, if you could see so many pictures in this particular slide under the heading protest. Can anyone can make any inferences about this picture about these pictures? Can anyone can interpret? Any guesses? Okay. If you see in this slide, the first picture, It clearly portrays the railway track, the image of a railway track, and where we could find bloodsheds. And this particular image, it clearly depicts the plight of the migrant workers when an immediate and a sudden lockdown was announced in our nation. And this particular picture, it clearly depicts the train accident which took place at Aurangabad, particularly a date on May 7, 2020. On May 7, 2020, this particular railway accident, it took place, and it is really hard to digest when people, when the higher officials, the so-called the intellectual bodies of who represent government, when they went and witnessed this case. I don't want to be very firm. I don't want to be very firm in pointing out the particular person name. When I do it, so what happens is that it paves way for so many controversies. The people who represents government, when they asked him, when they approached them, they put forth the question to them by asking them, what is the reason behind this incident? And the simple reason the people given by the people from the people who belong to the authoritarian regime, their response was that we all know that our country and our country underwent a sudden lockdown, and it was announced by the head of the nation. And the saddest truth is that the migrant workers were not given any proper transportation. And then we gave them a permission. They approached us, and we told them to to fill their particulars correctly, and so that we can issue the passes, and we can issue those e-passes to them, and they can be, so that their journey will be very comfortable. And whereas what happened was, this particular group of people, to put it precisely, they are from the village called Satna village. From Satna village, this particular railway incident, it happened in the Satna village. What happened was, these migrant workers, they were neglected. They were neglected by the people from Par. So what happened was, they started to migrate like anything else. They were just walking and walking. And at a particular place, what happened was, they were about to rest themselves, and at a particular stage, they rested near the place where they rested near the place near the railway track, and unfortunately, this particular incident had happened, and put it in concise, around 15 people were dead, and most of them were injured. And still now, government is taking so-called effective measures to eradicate this. And another saddest truth is that still now, the government officials, they say that we are in a position to take certain actions against those particular people who are responsible for this. And when the group of people, when they approached the loco pilot, his response was that I was unable to control the train. The reason is that the particular train was loaded with heavy luggages, and I was not, since it's being a goods passenger, I was not able to, it was out of my control. And after looking at this particular incident, a famous a famous poet from Indian region, okay, is a very good poet, and his name is Gulzar. Gulzar, he penned a poem. He penned a poem on migrant workers. He stated that these people, they are said to be the wandering singers. He put it in the words of Sarojini Naidu. Sarojini Naidu, she has penned a poem titled "Wandering Singers," and where in that particular poem, she clearly foregrounds the fact that the wandering singers, they go place to place, and yet then they travel with a unique purpose, that they will find a peace at least on any other day. Like that, these migrant workers, when the pandemic hit the entire India, these migrant workers, they were powerless, they were powerless, and also at the same time they were financially downtrodden, and there were no other way. And the the people around them, that is the institutions. I put it clearly. The institutions which are supposed to be for the welfare of the people, did not respond to them properly, and the outcome is that the lives of these muted voices are being shattered like anything else. That is the thing. And when these kind of incidents are being penned in the form of a poem, that is said to be protest literature, and to put it concisely, literatures of protest. And next thing here is that second image, where you could find the matchboxes and other things. Here, this particular image, it portrays the conflict between Israel and Iraq. The political conflict between these two nations can be clearly found in the poems of Muhammad Darwish. Muhammad Darwish, he has written innumerable poems, and out of it, my favorite is the Passport. In that particular poem, he questions his identity, and he questions how identity is being muted by the people at the airport. And is when just imagine and see how pathetic it would be for a person when his own identity is being muted by someone. And it is and as you all know, both these countries, they are known for their economic known for their natural resources, for what these two countries they fight. And there were so many leaders writing from starting from Saddam Hussein and Ed. There were so many leaders. Then the protest, the conflict between these two nations is still going on, and I do not know when it will come to an end. And the writers like Muhammad Darwish, when they started to uh, showcase the conflict is happening between these two nations. The saddest truth is that these nations, they often undergo a political turmoil, and the common people, the commoners, they do not know when it will come to an end. That is the thing. And if you see the last picture here, here it and if you see the last picture here, it clearly when you could see the last picture here, it clearly talks about humanity washed ashore, shame, shame, shame. And this particular, I hope all of you know this particular picture, this particular photograph has shaken the entire globe. When the conflict in Syria took place, this particular image, a single image, has shaken the entire world. The Syrian war crisis. I hope all of you know about this. And next thing is that, and if you see here, and the next thing here is that these two images. I hope all of you could sense what these images are. In these images, you could find the wordings like LTTE, and I hope these two particular images they resonate. They resonate the Sri Lankan crisis. They clearly portray the Sri Lankan crisis, and this particular picture, it clearly portrays the Kartigai Poo, which is said to be the Elam's national flower. I hope all of you know about the Sri Lankan conflict, which is still undergoing. I just don't want to get into this particular histories. These two pictures, it clearly resonates how 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 the nation called Sri Lanka, how how it had created troubles to the people of the Tamil Elam. Um, Here, in the context of Sri Lankan discourse, we have a renowned poet. A renowned poet, Rudramurti Cheran. At present, he is residing in Canada, and he can be categorized under a diaspora writer. And Rudramurti Cheran, he is known for his famous collection of poem, "A Second Sunrise." A second sunrise. When I uttered the word Sri Lankan LTD issues, the famous heartbreaking thing is that when the books were buried in the Yalpanam library was completely burnt. That particular issue paved way for so many unraveled conflicts. Um, as all of you know, Yalpanam is said to be a region where the Sri Lankan Tamils are placed. Sri Lankan Tamil, where Tamilians are were majority in number. And the Yalpanam library is said to be the asset for the Tamilians to understand their cultural nuances. And the saddest thing is that the Sri Lankan military forces, knowing that, as we all know, that Tamil Elam as becoming a very powerful force in Sri Lanka, they just wanted to they just wanted to mute them. They just wanted to mute their voices. That is the thing. And the best thing is that uh, the best thing in the protest literature is that documentation of facts plays a vital role. When it comes to Sri Lankan context, the Sri Lankan government, they are clearly deleted or they have erased the documentations of the Tamil culture. Of course, people are there. People are said to be the true testimonialists as they give voices. They give voices for the nations, and at the same time, the natives they talk about their own cultural identity. But the problem is that we live in a society where people question how authentic is authenticity. I repeat, we live in a society where people question how authentic is authenticity. The entire Tamil culture, and starting from the good old past, like how Tamil literature has got good Tamil literature has got good literary heritage, as how people will say that Altondra, Mantondra, Kalatire, Muntondra, Muthukudi, Tamil Kudi, like that. Sri Lankan Tamil, the Elam, they have got a rich heritage, and all those heritages are being documented in the form of a book. And the Sri Lankan government, they have burned it. And the Yalpan, I hope all of you remember this Yalpanam incident. And Rudramurthy Cheran, at that time, he was doing his undergraduate studies, and he was staying in the hostel. He was staying in a hostel there, and he was able to see how the books were burnt in the Alpan, how that particular library was damaged, was particularly, how to say, I'm just searching for diction to put it exactly. When all those histories are being deleted or being erased, just imagine how painful it would be for a person who represents that community. And that had happened, and that made Rudramurthy Cheran to write a collection of poems titled "A Second Sunrise." That is the thing. And here, what happened was, when those histories are being deleted, what happened? The outcome is that so many poets who sprung from Sri Lanka, who represent Elam dynasty, they just started to pen poems like that stuff. And the reason behind is that, and the true reason behind is that. Why do they pen poems on Sri Lankan issues is that histories and documentations were being erased deliberately by the power structures. And here I would just like to register the fact that books are said to be the report book, here I would like to register the fact that books are said to be the repository of cultures which will keep the wounds alive. I just repeat, books are said to be the repository of cultures which will keep the wounds alive. And the outcome is that, these incidents make a poet to be rebellious in nature. See, protest in the context of literature is that it is not making an individual to go and to go and get into the streets and just to raise the voice against the government. Of course, people are there. There are so many philanthropists are there, and with so many political movements happening around the country are there. Whereas for a good librarian and for a good student who's from literary background, for those people, the advantage is that all those things can be recorded in a form of a poem or of any literary piece. And we people, we can feel proud in saying that what history books cannot do, literature can do miracles with its own language. And we are, by having language as a medium, we people, we can show our protest in a form of any writing. And the role of a poet is to enlighten the minds of an individual. And I hope all of you know, I'll be I think it would be apt here to quote the quote of Shelley: "Poets are unacknowledged legislatures of the world." I repeat, poets are unacknowledged legislatures of the world. Poets can talk about the worldly affairs which had been happening in and around the globe. And we all know Shelley basically is a revolutionary poet, and revolution revolution differs from ages to ages, but yet then revolution it strives for revolution it strives for the betterment of mankind. That is the thing here. I hope all these five images they clearly represent the political issues which is happening in and around the globe. And the role of a poet is that is to enlighten the readers. See, nowadays, gone out those days where poets they fight for the welfare. The poets they were bold enough to write some good pieces of work. Whereas in the present scenario, we need people to be bold enough to talk about the social issues. Of course, we have got so many philanthropists, whereas all those things should be recorded in a form of a book. That's what I'm trying to say. And this particular image, it clearly portrays the women's emancipation, how women are being marginalized and how women are being a subaltern. In other words, what we can say is that othering women through gender stereotypes. That's what I would just like to share here. And next thing is that next year, what I could say is that protest poetry is said to be a socio-political discourse. Of course, a socio-political, in general, discourse are said to be series of events. And when I mention about the word socio-political, what you could infer is what I'm trying to infer here is that see, literature is said to be culture specific production. I just repeat, literature is said to be culture specific production. And culture studies is said to be a broad and comprehensive term which includes literature, anthropology, economics, politics, social sciences, and so on. And after the advent of culture studies, the gap between the anthropologists and the humanistic scholars have been bridged, and thus begins the interdisciplinary approach to knowledge. So, literature does not confine itself only to books, and now even a single line can provoke so many revolutionary ideas. So, this protest poetry has become a socio-political tool. And if you take in the context of diaspora, as we all know, the term diaspora, it had its origin in the Jewish history, where the people from Jewish identity, where they claim for their legitimate homeland. And the botanical meaning of the term diaspora is seeds disperse. And in general, the people used to say about diaspora is that the term diaspora is used to refer to any body of people or ethnic population who are forced or induced to leave their traditional homeland, dispersed throughout the world, and forming a community in the land of their own choice. And diaspora, it has got we could find so many diaspora poems in the context of in the context of Australian scenario, even in the context of India. If you take a famous poem by "Don't Call Me Indo-Anglian" by Syed Amanuddin, you can just Google it and see. There's a famous poem called "Don't Call Me Indo-Anglian," and it is by Syed Amanuddin. And where in that poem he talks about the plight of its own identity. That particular poem, it clearly showcases displacement, dislocation, and disjunction. How an individual is being how an individual's identity is being shattered like anything else. And these protest poetry, they deliberately erase the line between personal and political, so that the hidden truths and the falsified truths are being brought to center. And the motto of every literary work, and the rule of and the motto of every good poet is to showcase and to glorify the truths and histories which were being muted for a very long time. And why truths are being muted and why history is being manipulated? The simple reason is that everything happens owing to political monopolization in and around the globe. In other words, every king wants to become an emperor, and the outcome is that truth is at a stake. As I said before, how authentic is authenticity? That has become the plight of the individuals in and around the globe, not in a particular nation or a particular region. That is how authentic is authenticity. We are at a time to question everything. And this protest poetry, in the context of socio-political discourse, it clearly highlights, it clearly distinguishes the difference between history and another difference between history and other literary text. When you take a literary text in the context of literary discourses, facts are at the center, and history will be evolving around it. Whereas in the context of history, as we all know, the importance of individual is being highlighted right from the good old past until now. Of course, certain historians, they talk about the plight of collective identities. They talk about how the marginalization happened, how marginalization happened, and how separation of women happened. There were historians who wrote about it. Whereas most of the history books, they often spoke about they often spoke about the importance of an individual, where by doing so, what happened is that the collective history, which are said to be the muted history, was not being brought to the limelight. So the motto of, in other words, instead of saying using the word motto, the goal of the protest poetry is that it's to bring out the hidden histories. By doing so, what happened is that the readers, we as a readers, we will be able to understand how truths were falsified right from the good whole past until now, and um, and and we were at a point where those falsified truths were being celebrated. And of course, in the present scenario, as we all know, people, they run behind evidences, and and the outcome is that in certain cases and in the certain political discourses, those evidences too are being supported by the um, political hegemony. That is the status truth here. And next thing is that um, next thing is that this particular slide, I just want to insist one thing is that see, right from the beginning until this slide, you could see that you could find only images in my slide. Whereas I just believe from some of my professors who taught at St. Joseph's, they often tell me is that PowerPoint is meant only for powerful words, whereas we are not supposed to reflect. We are not supposed to type the entire lecture what we are going to deliver. So I just believe in their words. And here, this particular picture, it's nothing but it just reflects the quote of Sir Philip Sidney. Sir Philip Sidney, according to him, poetry is a speaking picture with an end to teach or instruct. I repeat, poetry is a speaking picture with an end to teach or instruct and to delight. Okay, so that's what here. And if you have any queries, you can ask. I'm ready to answer it.
Thank you, sir, for your words of enlightenment. I hope the spirit will invoke the young budding minds to create their work of art. Now the session is open for the audience. You can ask the questions by unmuting yourself or post it in the chat box. Audience, you can ask the questions or post it in the chat box.
Dear Mr. Santhosh,
Yes, sir.
yeah. First, thank you very much for that
Okay, sir.
erudite lecture. Hey, it's
Okay.
a beautiful lecture that you have delivered.
Okay, sir.
Remember that those days when you were inside the classroom and you have developed yourself multifold. Okay, and I could see a lot of scholarship in you. You have quoted extensively in your lecture. Maybe
Yes, sir.
you might have gathered a lot of points, like the poem by Gulza
Yes.
on migrant workers
Yes, sir.
by Muhammad Darwish, the
Yes,
poem
sir.
Passport, am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then Rudramurti Charan's Second Sunrise, that was a poem which you spoke about the documentation of facts and doing away of the documentation which was done by Sri Lankan government.
Yes, sir.
And you also quoted T.B. Shelley, the
Yes,
poet
sir.
of unacknowledged legislators of the world.
Yes,
And then
sir.
you also quoted Syed
Amanuddin. Ama-
Amanuddin. Okay.
Amanuddin.
Don't call me Indo-Anglian.
Yes, sir.
And towards the end, no, that was really touching when you touched Sir Philip Sidney, where he speaks about poetry as a speaking picture with an end, to teach and to delight. And
Yes, sir.
my question is,
Yes, sir.
to teach, to delight, and is there one more element like to transform?
Um, sir, see, Philip Sidney, he believed in the concept of poetry should transform, sir.
Yes.
But I believe in the words of Plato. I believe in the words of Plato. In certain cases, poetry, in certain cases, poetry, it is quite different from reality in few cases, sir. Not exact, not in every scenario.
Okay.
And sir, I could see few questions in the chat box.
Okay. Let me
Um,
take a few
from
questions for you, maybe,
sir,
without troubling you. The first question is: does the
yes.
protest poetry only become the voice of the voiceless victims?
Yeah, thanks for this question to my brother Akil Raj. Um, Akil Raj, my answer is that yes, protest poetry, protest poetry is for the voice of the voiceless. It is purely only for the victims, because we could find so many branches of literatures. If you take if you take subaltern literature, it talks about so many discourses. And even the saddest truth is that even under the context of subaltern literature, we could hardly find the text which talks about tribal issues. So when we take under the protest literature, where we could find so many issues and so many unheard histories can be brought under protest literature. So my question, so the answer to your question is that yes, protest poetry is for the voice of the voiceless, and it's purely for the victims. And next question is from my
From Ram
friend
Arvind.
in the technological world. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
in the
I got
technological
a
world.
question for you.
Yes,
There is a
uh,
question from a person titled named Ram Arvind. He says, in the
yes,
technological world that we
uh,
are faced with, is there true freedom to speak our mind?
yeah. Thanks for asking me this question. There is no freedom. There is no true freedom. We do not have any true freedom. But of course, in the words of Shelley, we can be unacknowledged legislators to talk. We have freedom of speech, and we have a freedom to uh, express our agonies which are happening even around the globe. We can register it. Whereas, answer to your question, to be direct, we do not have freedom. But yet then we can do it. We have to do, instead of saying we can wait for someone, we ourselves can break those barriers and we can start doing it.
Yes, dear students, if you have any doubts to be clarified, you can raise your questions. You can unmute or you can type it in the chat box. I think Infant Lord Rashmi has a question. Can you mention any poem or poet who wrote protest poetry in this era?
Yeah, you can take the poems of Gulzar, who spoke about the migrant work, migrant plight of migrant workers in the time of pandemic.
Okay, so someone is trying to clarify also. Engineering
Yes,
Kumar says Charan is okay. Rudramurti Charan is a living author. Thank you,
yes,
contemporary. Okay. Is there
yes,
anyone
yes.
from down south? Is there any writer of protest poetry? Suppose have you come across any?
Um, I, sir, if you take the poems of
Somebody.
Ambai, and if you take the poems of Salma, she's from Tiruchirappalli, sir. Her poems, it reflects the traumatic emancipation of women.
Very good, very good. We had the poems of Salma in Indian literature translated into English, right? Santhosh, remember?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Thank you, thank you.
yes,
Can I have one last
yes,
question
yes,
from the participants? If you have one, you can make one last question.
Sir, may I share information?
Yes, Mr. English, you're most welcome.
Sir, Shelley is our Mahakavi Bharati is inspired by Shelley,
yes, yes.
which tends to change his name as Shelley Dasan.
Okay, thank you very much, English. Santosh, that was a student from Department of Chemistry, my chemistry first year engineering student. Okay,
Okay,
very
sir.
happy, he has come out
Okay,
with
sir.
just information. Thank you very much, dear Santosh, for
Okay,
sharing
sir.
your precious time to share your views on the
Okay, sir.
topic.
Thank you. Okay,
Protest.
sir.
It was very nice thing to listen to you. And
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I also wanted to congratulate and thank Mr. Santhosh, and once again an appreciation to Dr. Gerald Sagayanathan also. Thank you so much, Santhosh.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
yes, Ms.
Thank you,
Rashmi.
sir, for yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for
Okay, sir.
answering the
Thank you, sir.
questions in
Thank you,
the
sir.
detailed manner.
Ms.
Gratitude is
Rashmi,
the best.
Ms.
Sir,
Rashmi,
am I audible?
yeah, you're audible. Kindly turn on your camera, and even the one who's going to deliver the vote of thanks can make yourself visible so that it could be recorded.
Okay, sir. I'll do so. Gratitude is the best act of our attitude. Now I call upon Ms. Kritika, MPhil Scholar, Research Department of English, St. Joseph's College, to deliver vote of thanks.
Let me first start by giving glory to Almighty God for making this occasion a resounding success. We are grateful to our Reverend Father Secretary Dr. S. Peter and Reverend Father Principal Dr. M. Arokisamy Savior in their absence. My heartfelt thanks to our head of the department and associate professor Dr. V. Paul for his support, vision and commitment. I owe a special gratitude to our chief guest, Mr. L. Santhosh Kumar, Ph.D. Research Scholar, Department of English, Bishop Heber College, Trichy, who has found his time to grace this occasion with his inspirational thoughts. I would like to express my special thanks to Dr. S. Gerald Sagayanathan and Dr. Beverly Mario Francis, coordinators for Bards Club, for organizing enthusiastic programs. I also extend my gratitude to all research staffs for their valuable guidance and encouragement in all our efforts. I thank all my friends for your cooperation making this event more success. Finally, I leave you with this inspirational quote by Wordsworth. Poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling. It takes origin from emotional recollecting tranquility. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kritika, for your words of gratitude. There is no doubt that the session was highly elevated, not only the minds but also the souls of each and every individual. So, once again, I thank you all for your active participation in the session. There is an attendance link in the chat box. Kindly fill the attendance link. Meet you soon in the next session. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you, Mr. Santhosh.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Very enlightening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Attendance name. After completing, you may leave the meet. Thank you.